afternoon, actually. It's morning somewhere, but not here. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Wyandotte Creek Groundwater Sustainability Agency meeting of November 20th, 2025. Please join me in a pledge to the flag of our nation. Ready? Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, roll call, please.
I note Bruce Riston is absent. William Bynum?
Here.
Bill Connolly?
Here.
I note Janet Goodson absent. Kyle Daly?
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. Next up is a consent agenda. Would either of you board members like to pull the consent agenda or make comment on it?
Nope.
Any public comment on the consent agenda? I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda to approve it.
I move we accept the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We're on to our regular agenda. 4.1, fee study update and consideration of fee structure approach. Who gets to go first? I don't know, I'll rush up here now. It's all Kimmelshew's fault, you know.
Oh boy. Good afternoon. Well, my name is Catherine Hansford, and I know some of you have seen me before, but I know I'm a new face to a couple of you. So, all right. Well, we're going to get right into this. All right. So, in August, well, actually a little bit before, let me back up just a moment here. In the springtime, Wyandotte Creek asked if I could run a fee structure that was the same as Viner's fee structure to see if it might work for Wyandotte Creek. And I did provide a memorandum with that information, and I presented that information to the board in August. At that meeting, the board asked staff and myself to explore options for a new fee structure for this GSA. We're looking to explore how the Viner GSA fee structure could be adapted for Wyandotte Creek, or whether modifications to the current fee structure would better meet the agency's needs. We were directed to work with the advisory committee and stakeholders to evaluate options. We wanted to consider how a regulatory fee could provide more flexibility for the agency and to bring forward a structure that could be adopted in time for the next fiscal year. So that would begin July 1 of 2026. So since the end of August, we did some research, and we attended the WAC meeting, that's the advisory committee meeting, on November 6th. At that meeting, these representatives were at the meeting, sorry. Cal Water, we had 2 agriculture representatives, the environmental representative, and the business association representative. So we had pretty good attendance from the WAC at that meeting where we discussed a fee structure. And then we also talked to stakeholders. We talked in person to the South Feather Water and Power, and we held a Zoom call with Thermalito Water and Sewer. We talked in person to 2 agricultural landowners, and these landowners own a variety of different lands, or I should say that better. They use their lands for a variety of different purposes. So we have cattle grazing land in there, rice, trees, and other crops that were represented in those conversations. And then there was also one conservation easement landowner that we talked to. So between the WAC meeting and those stakeholders that we spoke with, this is the feedback that we received. First of all, Overall, they supported the adoption of a regulatory fee rather than a property-related fee. They did have a little bit of concern. They wanted to ensure that there are some kind of guardrails. I'll explain that a little bit. So with a property-related fee, you adopt a maximum schedule of fees for the next 5 years. So people know that the board can't increase the fee beyond what is adopted in that fee resolution. And so I think there was just a little bit of concern that it's great to have flexibility. However, you just want to make sure there's some guardrails on that. So what I wanted to assure people, I hope I did at the time, was that the way that the board can do this is by having specificity in the resolution that adopts the fee. So you could have something like the fee will be increased by a CPI not to exceed a certain percentage. Okay, so you can do that. The board can always have the opportunity every year to reevaluate what the fee needs to be based on its budget. But you can try and incorporate some of those fees within the resolution that adopts the fee. They did support a 2-part fee structure like Viner has. The Part 1 fee is a parcel fee, so I'll just explain that. A parcel fee means that everyone pays the same for a parcel. So you might have a very small parcel, say a 1/4 acre or a 1/2 acre parcel, or you might have a 10-acre parcel, you might have an 80 or 100-acre parcel. But each one of those parcels would pay the same Part 1 fee. The reasoning for that is that the Part 1 fee is to collect for the administrative costs of the agency. It doesn't matter what kind of management activities the agency does, it still has to cover these certain core administrative costs. So things like insurance, having your books done, audit, legal fees, personnel costs, office costs. There might be some costs from the county that they provide services to the GSA. So these are all costs that would be captured in that Part 1. And a Part 2 fee then would capture all those costs that are generated by the need to ensure the groundwater activities are being conducted. It's being generated by those folks who use the groundwater.
So a couple questions.
Yes.
Just to clarify. Actually, for myself, I don't like to ask questions I don't know the whole answer to. But would that fee be collected within, like, the city limits also?
Yes.
On parcels? Would it be collected within water districts
Yes.
that receive domestic water? So every parcel, whether they use well water or not, would have a fee associated with it?
For the Part 1, yes.
Right. And would that be the same for every single parcel?
Yes.
Well, I kind of did know the answer, didn't I? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. One concern that we heard was from a representative of the, and I use the word domestic here on the slide, but really I'm talking about municipal users, and I'm really talking about in the cities. So, in Oroville and the Thermalito service areas of those water districts, they were concerned that their parcels, the people that they serve, could be paying proportionally too much because they don't use much groundwater in those areas. They are primarily surface water users. So one thing that came out of that conversation was, well, if you really are paying, if you're really using 100% surface water, then that parcel shouldn't be paying a Part 2 fee. So the only service provider that does that is South Feather Water and Power. Please ask me any questions as I'm going along, because I am also going to be looking
Yeah,
for
I do
input.
have a question.
Yeah.
Because in looking at it, it looks like the urban and industrial users use 1.2% of groundwater, and yet they pay 46.8% of the cost for part one. That does seem too far. I agree with the statement. I think that's too far out of whack. And now I know that they don't pay much on an annual basis, but still, it seems like that should be more in balance with the agriculture using 98.8% of the groundwater. So I would like that addressed or discussed more before
Yeah.
adopting anything.
Yeah, and I am going to address that. I think the numbers are like 96% of the groundwater is used by agriculture in this basin, and about 4% by the municipal uses. So that would be residential, industrial, institutional types of uses.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Another thing that we discovered in our discussions was that all of the agricultural land in this basin does also use surface water. Gosh, I'm really butchering my speech this afternoon. I'm sorry. All of the agricultural land, even if they're using surface water, they also have got groundwater wells. So that was a consideration because in your current fee structure, you have some parcels that pay a surface water fee and some parcels that pay a groundwater fee. And it's quite confusing as it's set up. And as I move along here, I think this will become a little bit clearer. But I think that distinction shouldn't really be such a distinction unless the groundwater user is taking surface water that is imported to the basin. So that would be South Feather River water. Okay. I think some of what I'm saying will become clearer as I move along in the slideshow. One other point that came up from the stakeholders was that the agricultural properties that are not growing crops, but they are pumping for wetlands, should pay a Part 2 fee. So in the Viner fee structure, the Part 2 fee for the agricultural properties gets applied to cropped acreage, not to the whole parcel, just to those acres that are cropped. If you did the same thing in Wyandotte, then the wetlands would not get charged a Part 2 fee at all. But those wetlands are irrigating per the terms of the conservation easements. They must provide the water to the parcels as they had before for mostly for fowl. Okay.
I totally get it. I mean, conservation easements and wetlands and so forth are really great, but they also fall off our tax rolls. They're owned by nonprofits, and they create issues for neighboring farms. And I don't, and I love to hunt waterfowl, but I believe that's unfair, personally. We'll see how it turns out here.
Okay.
I think they should pay.
Okay. All right. All right, so we've worked on development of a new fee structure for Wyandotte Creek. There are 3 key steps in this fee structure, which is similar to Viner GSA's fee structure they just adopt. This first step is planning for what the future costs are for the GSA and then how to allocate those costs amongst the different types of users. So step 1A is to approve a 5-year budget outlook for fee setting purposes. I want to be very, very clear that a budget forecast that is used for the fee setting is not something that you are bound to as a board to stick to every year, okay? And also, we're not looking from direction from you today because we haven't yet developed that 5-year budget outlook. I just want to explain the different steps in the fee setting right now. Then determine what costs are indeed Part 1 costs and what are Part 2 costs. So Part 1, again, what do you need to keep this agency functioning, doing all of its requirements to the state, to stay a viable GSA, to avoid going into probation with the state, okay? Again, we're not looking for direction on that today. That will be early next year. And then we want to determine the allocation of the Part 2 costs. And this is what I really want to focus on mostly in this presentation. In looking at different user groups, we have agriculture and we have domestic / really municipal users. In your basin, unlike Vina, there are also these managed wetlands. The managed wetlands groundwater pumping is captured in the agricultural crop growing numbers in your groundwater pumping, in your annual reports to the state. That's where that pumping is being captured. So starting out with agriculture, this is using about 96% of the total groundwater pumping is for agriculture. The way a cropped acre is defined is using the Department of Water Resources crop mapping data set. So they show, and this is all done using a mapping software, they show the outline of the cropped fields, and then we can calculate how many acres that is. And they have different codes. So they have R for rice, for example, T for truck crops, V for vineyards. And all of those codes would be charged the same cropped acreage fee per year. In Vina, they excluded the idle code and the unclassified code. Unclassified means that for one reason or another, perhaps it was growing crops for a portion of the year, but not for the remainder of the year. But for some reason, Land IQ couldn't identify it as growing a particular crop that year. And then idle means it might have been fallowed for a short time, within a 3-year time frame, or maybe a little bit longer. Now, that's something to consider here for this basin. Would you want to exclude those two categories or not? You actually have 0 acres that are idle or unclassified in Wyandotte Creek as of 2023. So that's something
We have
to
the
explore.
potential in the future.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So idle is like fallow crop.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not
Correct.
it's cropped ground that is
Yeah.
fallow.
It's historically been growing something, and the assumption therefore is that it was irrigating to do so with groundwater. It's not the same as the grazing land. The grazing land would not pay a Part 2 fee at all. They would only pay the Part 1 fee. And the managed wetlands, you have to have a definition for everything because you have to be able to apply the criteria for the fee every year so that it's being applied equitably. Managed wetlands needs a definition. I think that you can define this as the parcels that have wetlands easements because these are parcels that have to pump water. They have to create that wetlands per the term of their easement. So that's something we need to vet further with you. And then domestic, this definition is the same as in Vina. It's parcels that have a building or structure on them as identified by the assessor or by the FEMA structures database. There are a few holes in assessors data where they they don't have a record of building square feet, but you can clearly see on the map and visually that there is a building there. And FEMA often will pick those up. So it's just using both data sets to be as, just get the best coverage on the data set. Are there any questions about those different user groups?
I just, again, think that if you're pumping water for ducks or geese or whatever you're doing, it's groundwater use. And I think they have to, it would be unfair to anybody else that's pumping to be paying a fee and they're not. They could argue, well, I know all the arguments because I've been active in Ducks Unlimited and California Waterfowl for 30 years, I mean, but it would be just too unfair to the neighbor that's growing a crop and he has to pay it when their impacts are going to be annual.
Did they do anything with recharge because of wetlands that would be a benefit?
So does rice. So do flood irrigated orchards, you know, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, I hear where you're going with it, but I think we get the same benefit of recharge depending on the soil type, especially anything east of 70 would be, if you flood that or irrigate it, you're going to recharge some, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it.
Until you get farther into the foothills and it's clay, maybe not. I'm no expert.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Going forward, depending on what we decide.
Correct.
Or irrigated ground,
That's exactly right. It needs a definition. You need to clearly be able to identify those managed wetland areas.
And I guess the question would be the time frame that they have to flood. What if it's much shorter than growing crops, or maybe it's potentially longer? That would be relevant, wouldn't it? I mean, how
Well,
much water
actually,
you use.
I thought about that a lot. And I think at the end of the day,
Get a headache?
it's
I'm about
not.
to.
I did. I think at the end of the day, it's not, because the cropped acreage is paying the Part 2 fee regardless of what kind of crop's been grown. So you might have some crops that are very low water users in the basin, and then you've got others, well, rice.
Like a
And-
hayfield or something.
Yeah. So So let me show you a bit more.
Can I?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to, you know, sitting here, and my brain works this way. I'm going clear back to A and B. You know, that projection on that budget, we've relied heavily upon grants. So if we're going to project a 5-year budget, I mean, it's going to be less science and it's going to be art to figure if you're going to include any grant money, correct? You know what I mean? If we make a 5-year budget with absolutely no grants, and then I'm worried that will be much higher than reality if we do get the grants. But if we don't get the grants, what's the answer to that? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so I've been working with staff on it. It's not finalized yet. However, we do know certain grants are going away. So we do know that costs are going to be going up. I think the important thing for you to remember as the board is that you always have that discretion each year. So if the fee was set at a level that included costs that you then received a grant for,
We could lower the
you
fee
could lower your fee.
annually?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I did want to show you a couple of maps so you could see the different land uses and where these different parcels are. This map you see right now, this shows the cropped acres. And so, I don't know how well you can see. Do you each have a screen in front of you?
See right there. We have it right here too.
Oh, perfect. So you can see the codes here, the C, D, G, grains and hay, P for pasture, R is for rice, etc. And so you can see those different field colors. The deciduous, so those are your nut crops. There is in brown. Green, I think, is mostly olives. And you see the rice and yeah. So anyway, just give you just a helpful view of where those cropped acres are. And again, just to emphasize, the Part 2 fee is per cropped acre. It is not the entire acreage of the parcel, which your current fee is. Okay. I'm going to move to the next one. This is a map of the conservation easements.
A lot of them. I'm not going to get invited duck hunting when this is over.
Okay. And I have been working with the NRCS as well as the national databases I could find on this, and there might be a little refinement to do here, but I think we got them. What you see here, the blue parcels are the managed wetlands. The green ones have a conservation easement on them, but they're for wildlife. They are not for managed wetlands. So just to give you an idea of what conservation easements there are. But those blue parcels are not growing a crop. There are a few little bits on some of the parcels that are, it's very small. But these parcels, and this is mostly around that lower Honcut Road area.
It's where all the duck clubs are.
Yeah, and then heading north a little bit from there.
Yeah.
All right. And then this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just because, just to ask, what if somebody grows rice and then they do both? They have a conservation easement. I don't know if that's still possible.
It is possible. So there is a little
we would charge
bit.
them. We got to figure out what we're going to charge if you're both or one or the other.
Yeah. So I think it would be both, because I think what you would have is a fee that is per cropped acre or per managed wetland acre. So say you have a parcel with both rice and managed wetland on it, the rice would pay the per cropped acre. I think it's going to be exactly the same fee. It's just that you have to have the definition and then per managed wetland acre.
Okay.
All right, and then this one is to give you an idea of where the developed parcels are. Yeah, as you would expect, they're around Oroville, Thermalito, Palermo, and then down the very bottom there, that's Honcut. But you can see you have literally just a handful of small water systems serving mobile home parks. I think there's one school, mostly mobile home parks. And then you do have some domestic users. So domestic is also what we call a de minimis user. They're using 2 acre feet or less per year. But they would be charged the parcel fee and this Part 2 fee, which is on a developed parcel. So if a parcel has a structure on it, then it's a developed parcel. It's using water.
I guess the argument, Bill has a great point, but on the other hand, if we don't protect the ag water for the benefit of domestic user, if we don't protect all groundwater for the benefit of domestic user, their wells will be drying up and so forth. So there is a benefit that's not really tied to how much water they use.
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one, for sure.
Right.
But it just needs to be fair and equitable. We just have to figure that out. I agree with you. Everybody benefits from taking care of the groundwater, whether they use it or not. That was clear in that workshop we went to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, this job, I always said it was really easy till you had to charge people money. It was always coming this way. And then that Mr. Kimmelshoe over there, he changed it. He could have just stayed the bad guy and we were the good guys. Now we have to modify to catch up. I mean, come on.
Okay, let's keep
I
moving.
think I owe him lunch or something. I'm having a bad time here.
All right, so the second step is identifying the fee units. Okay, so you've got simple math, really. I mean, it's what's your cost? You're dividing it amongst your fee units. How do we identify these fee units? So we've been talking about the fact that it's going to be cropped acres, developed parcels, and managed wetlands. Okay, so we've got acres for cropped acres, acres for managed wetlands, and parcels for those municipal groundwater users. So that's how we determine, and that's all done using a mapping tool. And how the fees get assigned to those different user groups, as we've been saying, the Part 2 fee is intended for those users of groundwater. Okay. So you see the agriculture, the managed wetlands, and the domestic parcels. What you don't see here is the grazed lands, and there's quite a bit of it in Wyandotte Creek. So that's areas where you got cattle grazing it, or not. It might just be land that's not being used. They would not pay Part 2 fee at all. Okay. All right. So one idea.
We just made 75 people in Butte County happy.
Well, we'll see. Maybe not.
All right.
All right, I'm sorry.
Okay, so-
we gotta have a little humor here.
Yeah.
My head is hurting.
Okay, so an idea, a potential adjustment you could make to this fee structure. If the parcel is receiving Feather River water, now this is imported water, it's coming from another source, not from within the basin, they could pay a lower Part 2 fee, the reason being that they help to improve the groundwater storage in the basin's water budget. And I've got an illustration to explain that, okay? And there's a question here, but I don't want you to answer it for like another 3 slides, okay? So, thinking about this idea, should parcels that receive Feather River water pay a lower Part 2 fee? Here's the illustration. This is called the water budget. It's a diagram that's in your groundwater sustainability plan. Okay. So you have surface water inflow coming in, comes down into the groundwater system. If you push in more surface water, you create greater groundwater storage. Feather River water, because it's originating from outside of the basin, helps to improve groundwater storage within the basin. Okay, so I've already said that first bullet. The fewer impacts there are to the water budget, the fewer Part 2 costs will be generated, in theory, at least. Okay, let's talk on the domestic municipal side. South Feather Water Power, Thermalito Water and Sewer, and CalWater Oroville, they all provide imported water to those domestic users. South Feather, they're supplying 100% of their domestic users with South Feather River water. So the logic is they would not pay a Part 2 fee. The Thermalito and the CalWater users, they're supplied with 90% of their supplies are coming from the South Feather. So those users would pay 10% of the Part 2 fee that domestic well owners and the other public water system users would pay. So, if a water system, let's take, Mobile Home Park, for example, they are not taking any Feather River water, they are only using groundwater, they would pay 100% of the domestic user fee. Thermalito and CalWater domestic users would pay 10% of that fee. This is only on part 2. Okay. The South Feather Water Power Company also provides irrigation customers with some South Feather water. And there are some landowners, it's literally, you can count them on one hand, that are adjacent to the South Feather River that divert water for their own parcels. Okay. So for the agricultural users, they would pay a lower Part 2 fee based on imported water share of the total water used by agriculture. It uses the same logic whether you're domestic or agriculture. For domestic, we can quantify that right now because I have the data readily available. For agriculture, we're still looking at the data to determine what the percentage would be. I think, no, I'm just going to leave it at that. So that's a piece of work in progress. If you show interest in having this fee structure with this adjustment. Let me do one more slide, and then I'll answer questions on it. I wanted to give you an illustration of what I mean by this, and I'm just using the domestic users because I have readily available data for it. If the domestic users' Part 2 cost share was $7,000, this is for the entire year, and we divided it by the number of developed parcels, and we know how many of them are groundwater only and how many of them are groundwater and imported water. These numbers are actually not set yet. But really what I'm trying to illustrate is what's at the bottom of the table here. The groundwater only parcel would pay $3.10 in addition to its Part 1 fee, and those that use imported water in addition to groundwater, they would pay just 31 cents for that Part 2 fee. I'm just pausing because I know that's a lot to think about.
No, well, it's like, I understand, if you're diverting Feather River water over and you're irrigating, then we get a recharge benefit. I mean, what the crops don't eat doesn't evaporate. And I get that, especially in Palermo where there's a ditch and they provide irrigation water. That makes sense, but it's really hard to get your head around anybody that's on a public sewer system and they're getting domestic water. We don't get any recharge benefit because, unfortunately, we dump it back in the Feather River, which is another whole story and should be able to charge for it, but you can't so far anyway. So I'm trying to figure out. I understand South Feather's argument they don't use any groundwater, but should we let them off all fee? I don't. You guys jump in here. Don't let, my wheels are turning. I mean, no matter what we do, it's complicated. It's going to be hard to explain, and this room's going to fill up as soon as the bills go out because we were totally unfair to somebody. I can tell you that.
Perhaps one thing to think about is that for those domestic users, their annual bill's going to jump up by quite a bit just from that Part 1 fee, regardless of what you do with the Part 2 fee. The Part 2 fee actually is fairly small. And the agriculture, and particularly those who are cattle grazing, are going to see a big benefit from moving to this fee structure.
Right.
So, just something to kind of think about. This was a way to address that concern that the Thermalito and Cal Water are really using 90% of imported water, and they felt it's sort of a head nod to, yeah, we see where you're coming from, and there is a way that could be addressed, even if it's small.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't make me do all of this, you guys. You're going to come up with suggestions here and put numbers on it here in a little bit. Are you ready for that yet, or keep going? Or?
Well, I've got a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay, so step 3, like I already mentioned, that's just you arrive at the fee. So just wanted to illustrate. Okay, now I'm doing a couple of illustrations here at a higher budget. Your current fiscal year budget's $215,000. We know some of that grant funding's going away. We haven't quite yet worked up what a 5-year budget looks like. So because I know that it is going to go up, I wanted to provide you with an illustration of it going up. So if it went, for example, from $215,000 a year, here I've got $350,000 a year. Under your current fee structure, you can see there on the right, the annual fee per acre for the non-irrigated lands is $1.42 per acre for the entire parcel. For the irrigated surface water, that includes homes, that's $12.76 per acre. And then the irrigated groundwater, that's really the vast majority of the agricultural land, that would be at $20.06 an acre for the entire parcel. And then I'm going to show you an illustration of the potential new fees. This is without that Feather River adjustment, but just if you split the costs there between the Part 1 and the Part 2, and again, that needs to be determined by the board. That's not been determined. This is hypothetical. That Part 1 fee could be up around $17 per parcel per year. Then the Part 2 fee is, my eyes are failing, $9.85, I think that says there, for the cropped acres and the wetlands fee per acre, not the entire parcel, and not charged to the grazing lands. And then the Part 2 fee there is about 77 cents. And if you did that Feather River adjustment, you'd see that be a, oh, actually, that was the slide I had before because I had the $7,000, and it was $3.10 for groundwater only and 31 cents for that conjunctive use parcel. Okay, so that's just to give you a feel for, you know, if we just stick to talking about what the current budget is, I think that's the fees are going to be showing lower than what they're going to need to be. So I thought I'd just give you a flavor for what they could be going up to. And then I think I really want to wrap it up with this comparison of the fee structures. So your current structure, for a start, you only charge taxable parcels, okay? So City of Oroville, school district, state-owned parcels are not paying anything right now, but they're not exempt under SGMA. So in Vina, they moved to this fee structure to charge the non-taxable parcels like Butte College, Sac State University. So when you're doing a new structure, you're charging all parcels unless they are exempt by SGMA, which is federal parcels.
State's not exempt, huh?
They're not exempt.
Well, then we need to tax them because they don't give us anything, so I'm all for that.
I've already said this, I think, multiple times. The agricultural parcels pay for the entire acreage right now. And under a new structure, they'd pay per cropped acre. And I've talked about the grazing lands paying for the entire acreage. And here, this new fee structure, they'd only pay the Part 1 fee. And then the final one, under your current structure, the parcels using surface water pay less than parcels using groundwater in theory. I think there's been a lot of confusion with that in the actual administration of your current fee. So I don't know how well parcels are really being represented, if they're in the right category or not. Under the potential new structure, you could have parcels using the Feather River water pay less than the parcels using groundwater, or using a combination of groundwater and creek water. The reason why those using creek water would just pay the same fee is that that's all interconnected water. It's in the GSP. You have sections of a river or ravine where it's taking groundwater into the river, and you have sections where the river is pushing water down into the groundwater table. So it's really one basin of water. The only water that's truly different and could be benefiting the basin by bringing in more groundwater storage is Feather River water. Okay. So we are looking for any and all input, but we're looking in particular for direction. I would even say a motion, Dylan. I don't know if it's agendized that way, but if you'd be willing to even do that. But for proceeding with a regulatory fee 1, and second, proceeding with a new fee structure with a Part 1 and Part 2 fee, with Part 1 being a parcel fee, and with Part 2 to yet be, I think, refined.
Well, I'm struggling with $22 an acre for people that are actually irrigating their land. I mean, if you had 500 acres, that'd be what, $1,000 a year? I don't know. Seems like that's agriculture's tough to keep going as it is, and then you keep piling it. It's just like the argument the grazers had, right? At what point does it not make sense? And then our major industry in Butte County actually is agriculture, if you include all processing and export in bulk and or finished ag products. It's a huge economic driver for the community. So I'm struggling with charging them $22 an acre to grow rice or olives or whatever they're doing. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think we need a bit of a workshop to parse out some of these questions. Instead of, I'm not ready just to make a decision here on the spot. I've got questions about the fairness of it, you know, with domestic versus ag, and what are those numbers going to be? So I'd like to go into this in a little more depth and maybe table it for now.
So with our current, had decided that everybody that's in the basin is going to pay that. What's the exact that first I think it does and then really in problem one way or the other. We've got a as far from my perspective, it seems like right now, with our current fee structure, non-irrigated, it's like a land ownership fee, and so whether or not you're using this water, you're getting charged for larger parcels, while they might be using the same amount of water as a small parcel, are paying more. And I'm not sure that there's is closer to something that we asked for at the very, very beginning of this process.
We were told we couldn't do it.
A parcel fee.
Hey, Kyle.
Really, very very similar to what we have.
Can you put the mic closer to, sorry, I got someone online who just couldn't hear you.
Sorry. So, I mean, that's just my thoughts on it, but.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is we at Butte County had a very active water department, and we're developing science to protect our groundwater, and this was one of those things that's, you know, kill a fly with a sledgehammer by the state, that we're being treated the same as the San Joaquin Valley in some manner, and that we're forced to do this. And so to me, maybe that's a justification for charging everybody something, because it's just forced upon us by the state, whether it wasn't really needed here. I mean, we were getting there anyway, you know, we were ahead of them. And now, so I'm just speaking to you, Bill, because you're concerned that the domestic people will be paying unfair share because they don't use that much water. Well, the other way to look at it is unfair that the state forced us to do this, and maybe we got to spread that pain out.
Yeah, an unfunded mandate. I get that.
Yeah.
It's just
What
be as
balance?
fair as we can be, that's all.
Yeah, well,
So there's another thing, another way to think about that part one, part two for those domestic users, or, you know, a homeowner. When they get a bill from a water company, they pay a base fee. It'll be for a 3/4 inch or a 1-inch meter, whether they use water or not at all. That in that month, the water company will always charge for that base meter fee, because they provide a service to the parcel. If they use the water, then they pay more. And it's a little bit like that here. You know, that part one fee is to, I keep saying this, kind of keep the lights on, you know.
yeah, I
it's,
have a
it's
parcel that
responding
never
to the state.
ever turned the water on, and I paid it for at least 15, 20 years because I don't want to pay for a new meter. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what we'd get out of the workshop. I mean, probably nobody'd show up but us again. So, what are you thinking? We can't do nothing without your vote, Bill.
Well, we're missing two people here, and I'm not sure that, because I would like to see some adjustments made.
Okay, what would you suggest as an adjustment? Let's start there and see if we can support that.
Well, I just think that the percentage that domestic, I'm talking part one,
Okay.
is, because that's the one that's out of balance. As, I don't know who it was, but somebody said, concerned that domestic users paying proportionately too much as they don't use much groundwater. I think that's correct. And so again, if they're only using 4% and they're paying 47%, that, and it's a nominal fee, but it sets a precedent going forward that it's going to be out of whack, that but you want me to make a proposal? I'm just saying.
No, we
that
haven't had public comment yet. I want to know where you're going. And then
well,
we can do public comment. And then
my
come
analysis
back.
says fee per acre for acre feet pumped is $327 for urban and industrial, and only $4.37 for ag. It's just, I would want it to be adjusted so domestic well users don't feel like they're being taken advantage of, and it sets a precedent going forward.
Catherine, I just want to ask real quick. So for this one, we're just asking for the approach, not necessarily the number, because from my understanding is the part one and part two, like those percentages of who's paying what isn't determined yet. So I think when these costs and that percentage of who's paying is based on the part one taking up 60% of the budget and then 40% for that part two. And when we move on and understand our budget more, I think, or I believe the board will be able to look at the line items of each part and decide how you want to distribute that. And that would kind of change the distribution. Like we've talked about right now under a system like this, like my portion would be 100% in the part one. But you could divide that and say that my time is not just used for administrative, it's also used for the part two. And so you could, I mean, there's a lot of ways that we could change that. And I think right now our hope is to just get the idea of, do we want to go forward with the regulatory option so that we have the flexibility? And then also, do we want to continue forward with the part one, part two structure? So I think if you're totally, because I think if we, you could agree that the part one, part two structure is okay, we can look at those percentages a little bit more down the line so that the numbers are different. And I think Catherine would be pretty good at being able to provide all the different examples.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with doing that.
Okay, let's, is there any public comment? I'll make sure, anybody here like to speak?
I'll speak real quick. Todd Kimmelshoe, board member on VINA, GSA. I just wanted to say that if you look at the ag rates, the irrigators are paying more, yes, on a per acre basis, but their gross income is much more than, say, a rangeland user, a cattleman, where their gross income is much, much lower. And so we at the VINA GSA felt this was much more equitable, at least towards the large landowners. You know, farmers that are farming almonds or rice, I mean, they could be making gross income of $2,000 an acre or more. Whereas I'm not sure if you were to rent some grazing land, Kyle, what would the rental income be on a piece of average grazing land? Cash rent would be $10 to $20 an acre. Yeah. So I think that as far as the agricultural users, I think this model is probably more equitable.
Okay, thank you, because I don't know, you know, I was just worrying about it, because I hear from rice farmers all the time, they're not making any money.
Every farmer says that.
Because they drive off in their brand new truck,
They
you
got
know?
new pickups all the time, you know.
No, I don't know. I don't know, thanks for that, thank you. Well, so I guess the decision before is if we do want to go forward with a two-part fee, I think we can agree to that, all three of us?
Yes.
We do want to do that, but we do want to consider adjustments to, one board member is very concerned about equity to the domestic side,
Yes.
and what, you know, we'll just have to hash that out in the future. So that's what you want to know. We want to have a fee, yes, and we want to have a two-part fee, yes. What it is, we don't know yet.
And just to clarify, we want a regulatory fee, not a.
Regulatory fee, yeah.
I move that we proceed with the regulatory fee.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
New fee structure, part one and part two, without them being established, you want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, whatever you said.
Yeah. Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We got you closer.
Yes.
But this is difficult. I mean, whenever you're putting a fee or a tax on somebody, it's hard to be, there's no, well, really, there's not a way to make it totally equitable, I guess. I mean, it'd be a lot easier if it was in Todd's district. I could do it really quick. I mean, come on.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, yeah, and we're going to go after all that. The duck clubs are going to have to pay their fair share. However we capture that. Do we need a motion on that, too? Or is that just direction?
And we can just take that as direction now. And I'll just to note, we'll also take direction that we want to explore options in the equity aspect and the percentages of ag and domestic wells.
Yeah, I think the more you explain that, the more comfortable on whether it'd only be the part of their land that they actually flood or that would be at the higher fee. So.
Yeah, and just I think probably because we just did the ad hoc last time, we'll probably start with some of those preliminary discussions with the ad hoc and then bring it here just because the budget will change and we can look at it a little bit more clearly that way so we don't have as many hypothetical numbers when we're talking about it.
Well, thank you for all your hard work there. 4.2, groundwater level sustainable management criteria. Is that Becky?
Yes, hi, Becky Fairbanks,
Hi.
GSA Project Manager. I'm just going to do another quick introduction, and I'll turn it over to our consultant. So we're bringing to you today the groundwater levels sustainable management criteria. You're going to hear DWR's recommended corrective actions. So one of their recommended corrective actions is for us to actually specify the number of domestic wells that are impacted at each of the minimum thresholds, or MTs. So in response, in preparing to answer that question for them, you're going to hear from our consultants what they've done so far for a domestic well inventory. So this is so we can actually know how many wells we have in the subbasin, but also different criteria about the wells, right? And then we're also bringing you today 3 options for you to consider regarding the groundwater level minimum thresholds. As we answer that question, right, of how many domestic wells are impacted at the MTs, we bring to you, right, if we leave MTs the same, which is about 15% of wells being impacted, what that number looks like. And in addition to that, we have a dollar amount for like a mitigation plan. If the wells are impacted or go dry due to our management of the subbasin, then the GSA needs to do the mitigation, right? And so we have a dollar amount for you to look at also. We have 2 other options that we're bringing to you today. One is about if we change the MTs to either 10% or even 5%, and then what that dollar amount looks like also. We brought this to the WAC earlier this month, and they were in favor of changing the MTs to lowering it to 5% of, or I don't know if it's lowering or hiring, but changing the MT amount to 5% of wells being impacted. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura Foglia with Larry Walker Associates.
Thank you, Becky, and good afternoon. Laura Faglia with Larry Walker Associates. So I'll take you through the work that we have done just to justify our suggestion and our proposed approaches, and then you can kind of consider pros and cons. And I think we really need some feedback because March is around the corner when the grant ends, and we would like to kind of have some direction to move forward. Okay, so the action for today are, we have some, I would say, small suggestion on how to refine the definition of undesirable results, and it is exactly in the same direction of what happened for water quality. If you remember, we discussed, based on DWR comments, to remove the 2 consecutive years of non-dry year types. DWR provided exactly the same comment also for water level as expected, and so we discussed it at the advisory committee, and this seemed to be like something that can be more easily considered. Also here we are suggesting to move exactly in the same way as for the water quality. Instead of having just 2 represented monitoring well, we do 2 or 25%, whichever is greater, so that then if in the next 5 years you guys end up with 20 wells, we have more wells to pull from, and it gives you more flexibility, basically. The second one is the approval of the updated groundwater level monitoring network based on new data that became available. And then the third one is what Becky just said, which is the critical one, and it is going to be what is the process for redefining minimum thresholds. These are just this is the text from what we got, what the basin, the GSP got from Department of Water Resources, and so this is about removing the non-dry ER type condition, and on the suggested response, we are basically our suggestion is to change the definition to 2 or 25%, whichever is greater, representative monitoring sites. Wells within a management area reach their minimum threshold for 2 consecutive years. So this is how it will look like, and I think we are losing the 2 consecutive non-dry year type, but it's also true that that was really completely removing probably all the options to really get on undesirable results, but we are adding flexibility with the 25%. So it's the balance. And so the next comment from DWR was quantify the number of domestic wells that would be impacted if the basin reaches the minimum threshold for groundwater level. And this is the work that has been done in the past 6 months. So there is an update on the monitoring network. There is an update on the information that we have for domestic wells within the basin. And then we did a domestic well risk assessment to quantify impacts to domestic well if the basin reaches minimum threshold. And I think this is something really to keep in mind. We are not saying domestic wells that are at risk now, but we are talking about domestic wells that are at risk if the basin keep going lower and lower and lower with minimum thresholds, toward the minimum thresholds. Okay, so the groundwater level monitoring network update. We had to kind of revise the wells that were selected last time, and we look at some existing wells with enough data to kind of give us some idea of the history. And then on top of those, you know that there will be more that will be drilled, but those are not considered at this point. So the proposed monitoring network is now including 10 wells, and 8 are from the original network, so no changes. And 2 have been added based on some site selection. So the site selection, it has been done basically to have some representation of areas where domestic wells are present, and also trying to look at the upper and lower aquifer conditions. So this is kind of thinking a little bit more about the irrigation wells. So why doing that is because you want to have enough information so that then if something happens, if domestic wells are going dry because the groundwater level are declining, you want to have a monitoring network somewhere not too far away to understand, is this really going dry because of management, or is this domestic well just failing? So you need, this is the reasoning behind adding these 2 wells, and then we know that there will be more coming in 5 years. But it's not just for the sake of adding new data. It's really for the GSA to be able to understand really what's happening and be able to respond if a domestic well owner comes here and asks, I want my well to be mitigated because it failed because of GSA management. So this is so you see the wells that have been added are the one with the yellow triangle and the green, and there in that area there was really nothing before, and then one is down along Uncut Creek. So one is pretty much in the middle of the basin, and the other one is down on the southeastern corner, and really mostly to capture areas that were not really covered before.
So are we sure that this entire, inside of this entire boundary is actually perched water? You know what I'm trying to say is on the east side, it's not fractured rock, and because my worry is, say somebody's well goes dry, it has absolutely nothing to do with the way we manage the basin. You know what I'm getting at? It has to do with some geological change under the ground that's kind of normal with a lot of these fractured rock wells. Are we sure everybody's on a water table?
So that's the idea for adding these data and then adding the new wells
So
that
they'll
are coming.
tell us what we have.
Exactly.
You know how my mind's working?
I get it.
Yeah.
Because actually, and this is exactly why it's important to have more data.
Because I think Palermo's probably right on the boundary of where it goes from a water table from perched water to fractured rock water.
To the fractured. And that's why it's important to kind of have more data. So on top of these ones, there will be the new wells that will be drilled. And so even if they are not part of this official network, we can still use them to understand what's happening. But it's exactly, you don't want to be responsible for a well that is impacted for whatever other reason and not for management.
Well, wells, my family, my sister at least, is a pump installer, and before that, well driller, and being around it, I mean, wells fail all the time because the geology changes if they're on fractured rock. If they're on a water table, that's different because the whole area goes up and down together. So yeah, well, you've answered it. I mean, we're not positive that boundary's all on
Exactly.
water table, but okay. Well, it just seems like you're saying we're responsible if we make their wells go dry. I want to make sure we don't get blamed for something we didn't do.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
exactly.
I'll shut up. I'm talking too much.
No. That's good, and actually, it's important because this shows why it's important eventually to have more data. It's kind of an insurance policy for the GSA.
That was our first priority, was to get as much data as possible. And
Yeah.
that's what we were lacking
Yeah.
from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some nice people have test wells on their property.
Yes.
That ups your pay too. Double it.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely important, and you know, there are more data than what is just selected here. But remember, the representative monitoring site are the ones for which that need to be reported every year. So you want to have enough. You don't want to have too many. So it might be good to just keep it like this for now. See what happens with the new data, and then the network can always be reconsidered eventually.
Well, I think a concern that's been expressed to me is that, say, everything's good. If we're doing really well, our wells are very stable. So can we drop some of the monitoring then as not needed and save the people money?
It depends on 10 wells at the end. It's probably, it's not that you have to measure them continuously. You can even decide I will just measure them spring and fall twice per year. So there is room for reconsidering the network. I think at this point, because we don't have yet enough data, it's good to keep the 10. And then the basin is big also. So if you drop them, you are going to have big areas where if something happens, you don't know. So, but it can be open for discussion later. So looking at the sustainable management criteria for groundwater level. So after, we already said that non-dry, and hopefully that is something that we can all agree. We didn't look into changing at all the measurable objectives and the interim milestone. The measurable objective, if you remember, is the place where you would like the basin to be in 2042, which is pretty much very close to where it is now because it's still it is sustainable currently. So when it comes to the minimum threshold, we look at different options, and we can, what we are considering are two different criterion, and we would take the deepest of the two. So the first criterion is we can set the minimum threshold to a level that is protecting between the 5th and the 15th percentile of the nearby shallow wells. And we ran the numbers looking at 5th, 10th, and 15. And the second criterion can be setting the minimum threshold to a specified distance below the historical low. And the historical low was either during the 2014-2015 drought or the 21-22 drought. And what we look at is using a buffer below this historical low of about 20 feet right now. This approach is something very similar to what Butte Sub-Basin is using, just to give you some ideas of what your neighbors are doing. So what we did is, the only way to decide is to look into how the number look like. So the criterion, obviously, if we look at the 5th, 10th 15th percentile of the well at risk, how do we determine how many wells are really at risk? And what has been done is a full domestic well inventory. We have location for these wells. If you look in your map, we divided the wells by the date when they were drilled. We totally understand that probably some of those wells between 1900 and 1969, they're not there anymore. And unfortunately, the database from Department of Water Resources is good. It's not perfect. And somebody, they just, instead of declaring, okay, the well is inactive, they just don't say anything. Because if you say that it's inactive, you have to destroy the well. So a lot of wells probably are still out there, even if they're not used. But I think this gives the number by dates. They give you a sense of what happened in the basin in terms of drilling new wells. And with the study that we did, we found out for about 61% of the domestic wells, we have the exact location of the well within the parcel. For 39%, which are most likely the oldest wells, we don't really know exactly where they are. We only know the 1 mile by 1 mile
They're under the leach
centroid.
field.
Huh?
They're under the leach field. That's a joke.
Yeah, so it is what it is. As I said, it's not perfect, but I think it's getting to numbers that are reasonable. And also in the map, you see that basically where there are the cluster of greenish well, those are the newest wells. And then if you see the red and the black, they are a little bit more into square because we don't know exactly the location. So this is the work that was needed to kind of go back to the number of domestic wells within the area of influence of each monitoring well, representative monitoring well. So the assumption for this domestic well risk assessment, so as you saw earlier, we have 792 domestic wells, given or taken. We understand that there are issues for sure. So we have groundwater elevations that are measured at each representative monitoring well, and each representative monitoring well has a zone of influence, right? So there will be a certain number of domestic wells within that zone of influence. We removed 31 domestic wells because those were already with the estimated bottom elevation above the historical minimum. So probably those are gone already. We also excluded all the domestic wells that are within a public water supply service area. So there are 8 from Cal Water, 25 from Thermalito, 135 from South Federal Water and Power. So those wells we assume that are not there anymore because these people probably have been connected in the meantime. So if we also assume that all the wells pre-1980 are no longer in use, we are excluding 237 wells. So this leaves us with 360 total domestic wells in the basin that need to be included in the risk assessment. So with this number in mind, what we did is we look at the criterion 1 and 2 that we discussed earlier, and we went through a few. We will go through a couple of examples, but let's take the first, the one highlighted in red. So in that specific well, the current minimum threshold is 76, and the domestic well count for the area of influence of the polygon that belongs to that well, it's 48. The historical low was 108. And so what we looked at what is if we protect 5%, if we leave, we let 5% of the domestic well go dry, and in that case, the new potential minimum threshold would be 98, and the low is low to the groundwater level by 10, and then we also look at, okay, if we keep projecting things as they are right now, how many years is gonna eventually take to get to the minimum threshold? And in this case, it would be 80 years, for example. But again, projecting out with some decline with the past droughts and whatever. And if we look at protecting 10% of the well, we get to a minimum threshold that will not even be reached in 100 years. So this puts things kind of in perspective on looking at 5% or 10%. And if we look at, I really want to go to this one because it gives you a sense, and this is the example that we just looked at. So the blue line that goes up and down is your observation. In this case, actually the historical low was back in the days. It is just what it is. And this well is very stable. I mean, we can find a really, really small decline. That's why we are looking at more than 100 a year to even reach the minimum threshold. So, and then how do you read this plot is you have the historical low is the light blue line. You have the purple line, it's the current water surface elevation. And, no, sorry, it is the 5th percentile. And then you keep going down, and then you get to the 10th percentile, 15th percentile, and the current minimum threshold. So obviously, with this approach, we would bring up what is currently in the minimum threshold, but it's probably a safe bet. Because if it's going to take anyway between 80 and 100 years to get to the higher criterion that we were looking at, probably this well will never make it to that red line. Just because of how it is in the basin, and a lot of wells are like this. So I think what I want to show you is this one, and then I can go backward. How do we want to think about this 5%, 10%, and 15% protection, let's call it? At the current MTs, for example, we would have 53 wells that would be kind of at risk of being impacted, which means if we look at a number for deepening the well or drilling a new domestic well, and I think we did 30,000 per well to deepen. Maybe it's not even enough with the current prices. That's something that we thought later when we were talking about drillers. So probably this is a low cost estimate. So that would be 1.6 million roughly. if we decide to bring up that minimum threshold, it would be only 38 wells, and it would be 1.14. So the reason why we are bringing the different options is really because is there a real risk to get to that minimum threshold? If not, do we just want to have an approach that eventually let the GSA save some money without taking any risk? Because in any case, we are saying we take either the 5th percentile or at least 20 feet of buffer below the historical. So it's, and I have to tell you, in the wells that we are considering, it's a combination of the two criterion. So in some cases, the deepest is the 5th percentile protection. In some cases is historical minus 20. And but what it's important, if you go back to the table where we have all the wells, you see that for many of these MTs, it's the projection using the current decline. It's many, many years to even get to those lower MTs. And just to give you another example of a well that is a little different, this well is going down a bit. It's in a different place in the basin, and this is one of those that has seen a little bit of decline over the previous year. But you see that after 21, then it's kind of getting back again. And so in this case, basically the current MT, which is the red line, 71, is slightly above the 5th percentile and slightly below the criterion 2, which is the 20 feet below the historical minimum. We are really talking about feet. It's not that we are talking about huge differences. It may make a difference when we look at that table with the dollar amount based on the wells that are potentially impacted. So this is pretty much the type of thinking that we had, and we like the idea of having a very structured approach. So if we all agree saying it's either a certain level of protection for the well, and you can decide if you want 5, 10, or 15%, or the historical minimum minus 20 feet. So in any case, you have at least those 20 feet. It is kind of something that can be easily replicated also in the future for the new wells if we decide to include new wells into the monitoring network. And from the perspective of risk, it looks like most of these wells are really stable. And if we see down the road that one well is kind of behaving completely different, then it goes back to what you were saying. There are some wells that may just be in a different geology, and we can revisit based on what we find out. But as looking at how things are right now, most of the wells, up and down, that's normal. It's a wet year, the dry year, but it's no significant drawdown. So it's might be something to consider. At the same time, the reason why we look at the dollar amount for mitigation is because a mitigation program in case domestic wells go dry is kind of required by Department of Water Resources right now, because the GSA can decide and say, I don't care, I'm fine with even 20% of the domestic well, at risk of going dry, but no worries, we have a plan and we have the money. And again, it's not 20% on year one. This is something to keep in mind. It's 20% over and up to 2042. So it's not that you need 1 million in your bank account right now. Still, this is how this is the reasoning and why this type of consideration on domestic wells is important. It would make your plan stronger so that you say, we are okay with this approach, and I don't mind which one you pick, and we know
Which
that
one
we
does
can.
DWR want us to pick?
They don't mind.
They don't care.
They don't care as long as you say we pick 15%, and we have enough money by 2042 to mitigate whoever comes to us and say, you didn't manage the basin and my well went dry.
I see one issue. We kind of want something going down so we can apply money to divert this water and put it into a recharge project. So if our wells are too healthy, they're not going to give us money for a recharge, right? So,
I think you can still. I think recharge is moving forward, so I think there will be money for recharge. It's just a question of finding.
Yeah, because we really have a need out in the Palermo area to divert water that's flooding people, recharge, and also have retention to avoid flooding. So yeah, I'm excited about getting it, but if the well looks like it's going up every year, I don't know that. How do you put that on the application, right?
You can still use a few wells that maybe show some decline as a.
Yeah, we'll do it right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just say, I want it here.
Anyway, I guess I'm comfortable either way. What do you guys want to do?
So the options presented are either or protect, or when it fifth, 10th, or 15%.
Whatever is deep, whatever the deepest, the deepest between the two.
Okay.
Which, looking at the wells and the numbers, it's a combination of the two. Mm-hmm. Some would, in some wells, let's say the winner would be, let's say, the 5th percentile, and in some other wells it would be historical minimum minus 20. And same if you pick the 10 or the 15. I would say probably between the 10 and the 15, there is not a huge difference. Probably the difference is if you pick the 5th percentile. But again, we are talking about feet. We are not talking.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I just want to get a little bit of clarification because on one of the slides, from my understanding, the question we're asking isn't necessarily either or for the 20 feet below historical level or choose a percentile.
No, that's yeah.
Oh, okay, because like on the one slide it says and, so my bad. Okay.
And, sorry.
Yeah, go to the request of action slide.
Did we put and instead of or?
There we go.
We did because it was going to be whichever is the better between the two.
So, yeah.
Whatever is the deepest.
Between the two, yes.
Between the two.
So each RMS could have a different.
Yeah, each RMS can have a different. Sorry, that's why it's an and. But you get whatever is the deepest between the two criterion.
Right, so they're not
Okay.
deciding on either or. It's
No,
both
no.
of those, but you're deciding on the 5, 10, and 15.
I don't think
Yes.
it's going to come
Yes,
into play.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
All right, so I think, is there any public comment on this matter? Closing public comment, let's do a motion here.
I did just want to note one thing, and I think Becky had
Sure.
mentioned that at the WAC, their work, just so you understand what their recommendation was, is they saw those numbers because it was kind of related to the mitigation program, is they thought I think their preference was the 5% because then you could account for less in the mitigation plan. Just so you're aware, that was what the WAC had agreed upon.
So with the 5th percentile wells that would be dry, and then I'm sure you've mentioned this before.
No.
Is there, if a well is reported dry, is it immediately tabulated as one, or is it?
Yeah, there will be a next step. There will be a kind of process because you don't want everybody to come. And that's why we did this well inventory, so that then when somebody comes to the GSA asking for a new well, you can go back and check the information that we have. And we will have to work. Your neighbors, they started working on a protocol for mitigation. It's not as easy, so we will have to figure out how that will look like. So might be less than 38 eventually, but or maybe a few more. That depends on different criteria, but it's roughly.
I'm fine with it. As long, it's dropping it by 15 wells based on our current.
Yeah.
And we could be in a drought and not have any dry wells. It just depends. I mean, you know, we don't know. It's
if you look at this well, you were in a drought, and that is not even a slight. Remember that your undesirable result is not just one well 1 year; it's more wells for 2 consecutive years. So if one well has problem, we can always go back and check if that is due to drought, bad management, or whatever.
okay. Put us back to what you want us to
Sure.
pass here. You give it a 5% now?
Yeah, 5.
All right. Why don't you just make a motion to approve that stuff there?
Okay, I'll move for 5% on minimum threshold option.
I have a second on that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's go to 2. Let's approve the updated groundwater level RMS network map. I'll make that motion. Give me a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Somebody else make a motion on number 1.
I move to amend the definition.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good job.
Thank you.
You didn't answer all of my questions, too. It's pretty cool. You've already, yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay, we're going to move
Good.
on. Then.
Thank you.
Groundwater level sustainability.
Do you
We
mind?
did that one. Okay,
Thanks.
moving right along. Whew.
So just real quick, because my brain went a little wild with all the different ones, to make sure I have this right. So for the first motion for the 25 to get rid of the dry years, that was you made the motion, and then Director Bynum made the second,
I made the next motion.
and then you made the second for the and then
And
the
Bynum
last
made
one,
the motion.
and then you
made the
seconded.
third.
Okay,
And we did them backwards, just to confusion, yeah. But we
it
got
was
it
kind of
done.
like a puzzle. But yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we're at groundwater sustainability plan periodic evaluation amendment schedule update.
Hi again. So what we're asking you to, so you just heard our last topic coming to you for the periodic evaluation and amendments. Our current, and then the next time we're going to bring an item to you, it's going to be the draft periodic evaluation and the draft plan amendments. Am I just pressing the over button? Okay, thanks. Okay, so we have a request. We're just asking you to consider the schedule for the periodic evaluation. Our current schedule, and we are on track, is to finish the final periodic evaluation and the final plan amendments by March 2026, and that is completely grant funded. I will just say over the past month, as we've been continuing to do this work, we've had a couple of questions come up internally. That's why we're bringing this to you today, to think about extending the schedule through the end of 2026. One thing, so the annual water report for 2025, that's already underway. That data is getting taken care of, collected, and that team is working on that. It'll be finished in February of 2026. That just gives us a little bit of wiggle room to try to incorporate all that data right into the periodic evaluation by the March date. If we extend this schedule through the end of 2026, we can kind of continue to collect data from the different monitoring wells inside the basin and fold that data in also to the periodic evaluation. And then also, so DWR is going to be issuing guidance. It's kind of been coming. We don't know when it's actually going to come out, though, right, for interconnected surface waters and also for interbasin coordination. Again, so if we extend the schedule through the end of 2026, it kind of allows us to incorporate any feedback or guidance, that they have for those different 2 topics.
Is there any public comment on this matter? Seeing none?
Can I say one last thing?
Yeah.
Sorry. So if we do extend it, it means that we would have to do a second contract with Larry Walker Associates, and that would be for the amount not to exceed $30,000. Also, contracts are negotiable, so if you want a different dollar amount, we can stipulate that in there. But it wouldn't be grant funded if we extend it. Like April through December would be on the GSA.
Is it 30? It's 50 in our packet.
I know. I'm sorry. I had a typo and I didn't correct it in time yet. So it's just on there. So it's actually 30,000. But so we're asking what your direction is today about if we proceed with option one of just doing the grant funded work through March 2026, which is when the grant ends, or if we do a separate contract with Larry Walker Associates that the GSA would pay for, like an amount not to exceed $30,000 to give us that extra time through the end of 2026.
You did state that if we do one, we don't know exactly what DWR wants of us. And if we do two, then we'll know and then it'll be done. So I think sometimes we have to go the long way. That's the way I'd look at it. And it's not surprised that DWR tells us to do something, but doesn't tell us how to do it. Kind of normal. So I'm leaning towards the second option. But it's up to the board. Somebody make a motion.
And so this would basically fall on the ratepayers. Is there, as far as like paying for that to do that now? Or
Not with the grant dollars. No.
But
But it is in your, you have budgeted some technical and professional support in your budget, so you will have approved some funds through the fee.
I guess where they get us is if we don't do it, we're going to do it anyway. You know what I mean?
Right. I guess I know what's based on the first presentation we had and everything. So I was just curious if there was something that we could move around to where it doesn't be a new line item, but something that we can move in that space.
I think we just charge the grazing line.
Well, I do want to note that the grant has covered a lot, for outreach has covered a good amount of my time. So I think when we had originally budgeted for the program manager line item this year, we had not accounted for the Sigma grant covering some of my time. So I think I would say that would probably cover a good amount of it. And I think there's probably potentially some other items to where it wouldn't have to come out of next year's line item. I can't guarantee that, but from my understanding, I think we could make that
motion.
Yeah. Well, I'm supportive of it if it makes sense for staff and everything. I was just curious about.
You keep us in line. I like it.
I'll make a motion that we go with option two, extend schedule finalized by December 2026.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And
Thank
just to
you.
confirm, that was for the 30,000. That's for 30,000. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we're not shocked when you come up here and say, DWR is requiring us to do this, but they haven't given us the guidelines on how to do it yet. I mean, whatever. We're only safe when Sacramento's shut down. I'm sorry to say. But 4.4, presentation on sustainable groundwater management grant projects. This is all good news, right, Becky?
Oh, it's all great news. I'll start with the not so great news and I'll end with the fabulous news. How about that?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so a little update. So you all know we have, as part of the data gap project, we want to install some monitoring wells, right? So we had another little hiccup happen as we were preparing the bid documents. LWA has contracted with Waterworks engineers. They're doing all the solicitation. We had the pre-review of it, and it just didn't pass the legal requirements. So it's going under a third revision right now, and it should be available this next week for review again. That's going to push us back a little bit more. So we're looking at December 5th to publish the invitation to bid and then award the bid, notice of intent to award the bid January 5th. That puts us to February, probably, of installing the wells. We can do the work through March 31st, so we're just going to prioritize, honestly, as many wells as we can and just do the best that we can with that.
And the ones that are
Won't get done. Yeah. Okay, regional conjunctive use, everyone. This is the great news. So we have one of the tasks is the agricultural surface water supplies feasibility study. We're doing two kind of separate analyses in this topic. So one is we're working with South Feather Water and Power Agency. We want to see about diverting some of their excess surface water, right, so that people in the subbasin can use surface water to irrigate their crops rather than pumping groundwater, which we can kind of consider as in lieu recharge. It was maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, we did a little like mini test run to kind of see, does this idea really work? And it does. So we actually diverted, just using like sandbags, a very simple technique. We diverted like 10 CFS, or about the equivalent of like 10 basketballs, down for like about 2 weeks. Water was running. It took a little longer than anticipated, but it did reach the landowner, which was about 11 miles downstream.
Wow.
It took about 8 days, honestly. But we also discovered, so there's kind of 2 obstructions along the way in the path. One's a beaver dam that we wouldn't do anything with, but there's a few like structural issues that we could see about, like the cost that would go in the feasibility study, like what the cost is to actually kind of repair, like the conveyance system, right? We also realized, so a little less than 50% of the water reached the property owner. But that's still a win in my books, because like we have that under 50% used to irrigate the crops, but we have the other like a little over 50% did like direct recharge then, as it just kind of like trickled back down.
It's not a gun-eyed canal or ditch, so it's a recharging as it goes. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And then, you know, on the beavers, it used to be here in the valley, you could take care of them. Just last year, I think they passed a law they're protected again.
Yeah.
Which is, it's going to cause millions of dollars in damage. We need them up in the mountains, but you know that's how government works. They're killing that. You know, that fly with that sledgehammer. They should have drafted something above a certain elevation. The beavers are invited back. You know, but we can't touch that beaver dam.
Yeah. No. But we can look at the other repairs needed to be made. And the good news is even without the repairs, like about 50% of the water was reaching the landowner. So that's really good, I think.
And they have excess water that 50% loss isn't a great deal to them. Okay, good deal.
So the second part is we have the Palermo multi-benefit feasibility that we're looking at. And so this also has a pilot project that we're doing. This pilot project, so we only have about $80,000 to use, so it kind of limits like the amount of work we can really do. But we're looking at about 1.7 miles of drainage ditch to kind of clear out. And this covers from about Messina Avenue down through town, ending just west of Occidental Avenue. And then, so the work's going to be completed in phases, and we're working with RCI and General Engineering to perform the work. And we're also doing this work in according with also Butte County Public Works. They're letting us use their routine maintenance agreement. So that's actually speeding up the process of working with California Department of Fish and Wildlife to do all the permitting processes. Yeah, so it's actually really helpful. We have an agreement with Public Works, and it's working really well. And so the
Fish and Wildlife's cooperative on this?
They are, but I'll get to that in a minute also. It's a little slower. It's still, so it's helpful on the permitting process, but they only approve about like a 400 by 400 section at a time. So I have a couple pictures up. This is before they did any of the work, so you can kind of see how overgrown these ditches are, right? Like this is like overgrown brush and stuff. Like that's just kind of what's kind of caused to flooding, and also not allow water, right, to kind of actually get down and recharge. So we had the team was out on the 10th and 11th of November, and this is actually as they're starting to do the work. And
it's needed. It's terrible there.
Yeah, this is along Baldwin Avenue and Palermo Road.
It's just terrible.
And so that's what they cleaned up in just those 2 days. I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel like this week they were going to be out in a second area on South Villa Emmett Road. And so that's what they're doing this week. And so again, this is only the second area that's been pre-approved, cleared by CDFW. We just kind of working again, like they're going to, do a little section by section, but that's the idea. This is what we're doing for the pilot project for that Palermo area.
Many of the landowners used to take this on themselves, but when Fish and Wildlife started threatening to, I don't know if they ever issued a ticket, but they threatened to, people quit doing it. And now I hate to say it, but this generation, they don't do that, But in the past, guy'd get his tractor out, clean a ditch,
So the Public Works doesn't have a right to maintain this infrastructure or anything? It's got to go through...
It's complicated out there.
Actually, yeah, you're right. It kind of overlaps because there's like county area. It's all over the place.
Some of the roads are prescriptive roads. We don't own the ditch. Some places we do.
Yeah.
Then there's some of it's on private property. But again, then Fish and Wildlife has been the biggest hang up. The only time you can get around it is if there's a declared disaster, like a flooding disaster. And then you can enter without a permit. And unfortunately, my predecessor told everybody in Palermo they were going to do it every year. And then I got elected, and I found out that was only during a flood event that they did it. And they've been yelling at me for 22 years. So
Yeah, so
I'm
we
grateful
received,
for anything you do in Palermo.
we
like
got
that.
encroachment permits for the areas, and then we also, some of it is on private property, and we were able to connect with landowners and get access agreements for that also.
Yeah, they want it done.
Yeah, everybody's been notified. Everybody is definitely like friendly and helping us get.
I like the
done.
old guy that shows up. I'll get my tractor. I'll go out there and do it. I go, well, just don't tell nobody. Yeah, cool.
All right. So, any other questions? That's kind of the end.
No, we don't have to vote on any of that.
No.
Right?
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a great report. I'm going to take all the credit for it, too, when I go to Palermo, I'll tell you. Reports and correspondence. Yolanda?
All right, I'll keep it short today. So just another heads up, we are going to have that December 18th board meeting. That should be for the fee study. It should probably be on the shorter side for that day, since I think that will be the only item including the calendar. And then also, it looks like there could be potential talks about the cost share with the county in December or January. So because of the fee study going on, I think that the ad hoc will probably be pretty busy January and February. So just know for you two, you'll probably be getting some emails to say like, let's go, it's budget time. So just be ready for that. And that's all I have for you today.
Okay, anybody, all you people from the public, you want to listen to it, we can't take actions because it's not agenda. Hey, I'd like to say that I really enjoy the staff and the board here, and I feel like we are doing things, you know. I mean, I'm looking very much forward to our projects when we get to do some projects. Thank you for
Absolutely.
your input.
Thank
Thank you. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. I'll see you back here for next month's meeting.
Excellent.
We're adjourned.